Washington tells the United Nations it will enforce sanctions to the maximum against Venezuela. Russia warns this could set a dangerous precedent in Latin America, while Caracas accuses the US of being the real threat. Syrian foreign and defense ministers hold talks in Moscow on deepening strategic cooperation with a strong emphasis on military and defense industries alongside political and economic issues. Thailand and Cambodia agreed to hold a meeting of defense officials to try and revive a months-old ceasefire as border fighting enters a third week with at least 80 people dead. The US Supreme Court refuses to let President Donald Trump deploy National Guard troops to the Chicago area, marking a rare setback for the administration. The justices leave in place a lower court order blocking the deployment while a legal challenge by Illinois and local officials continues. Belgium formally joined South Africa's case at the International Court of Justice, alleging Israel is committing genocide in the Gaza Strip. The court says Belgium has filed a declaration of intervention in the proceedings. Libya's army's chief of staff dies after a private jet crashes following departure from Turkey. The Prime Minister calls it a major loss for both the military and the nation. New South Wales passes sweeping new gun and anti-terror laws in an emergency parliamentary sitting following the Bondi Beach mass shooting. Those are the headlines of the hour, but we continue our coverage on the newly released Epstein files. And these released documents reveal a series of controversial emails, including from one individual known as A, who wrote to Ghislaine Maxwell asking for inappropriate friends. The email sent from Balmoral Castle in 2001 is part of a wider batch of over 11,000 files made public today. The documents also show Maxwell discussing a trip to Peru with someone called the Invisible Man and forwarding details to Prince Andrew's team. Though Prince Andrew, now Andrew Mountbatten, is named, the documents doesn't suggest any criminal activity. However, a request from the US Department of Justice to interview Prince Andrew in 2020 highlights his possible connections to Epstein's ongoing investigations. The release also mentions US President Donald Trump's links to Epstein, noting that he flew on Epstein's private jet more times than previously reported. Both Trump and Andrew have denied any wrongdoing. Joining us now is Daniela Bloom. She is a political commentator and she joins us live from Los Angeles. Daniela, thank you very much for joining us. We'll get to Trump in a minute, but of course, formerly Prince Andrew, now Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. He's had his titles completely stripped since that notorious interview with Emily Maitlis of Newslight. But of course, it's different as he has had a prominent accuser in Virginia Giuffre, now deceased. Do you think these emails have brought anything new to light or just confirmed things that we already knew?
Yes, I think it confirms things that we already knew, that this was a very elaborate operation that had to do with heads of state from all over the world, in America, in Europe, in the Middle East. And Trump has done his part. He's authorized the release of all files, full transparency. But will the public be satisfied with what gets uncovered? I'm not so sure.
And Daniela, of course, would you say this has been done in full transparency? Of course, the Act said that the only two reasons why things could be redacted would be the identification of victims, and of course, if ongoing trials were happening, and so any information that would come out would disrupt them. This release has come under much scrutiny with the American people, bipartisan scrutiny. Do you think further release of these files will make the American people satisfied, or will this issue be ongoing?
It's ironic because under the Biden administration, there was no need from the Democrat Party to get these answers, to get this transparency. But it's actually the Trump base who demands answers.
Hmm.
But I think that there are way more individuals coming out of the Democratic Party that will need protection. And that's why I don't think the public will be satisfied. It will not get all its answers. We will never fully know who was actually doing wrong. But I emphasize again, Trump has done his part to be as transparent as possible. And even now, there are still no full evidence of full and real allegations.
Daniela, of course, Bill Clinton, who is photographed in many of these images, has said that he is open to no redactions when it comes to the release of these files. Does that put pressure on Donald Trump?
I think Donald Trump is also open to full transparency. That's what his base wants, and he has delivered. Trump has had pictures with Epstein as well. It doesn't mean that there were any necessary wrongdoings. I know that once Trump was made aware of the nefarious activity by Jeffrey Epstein, he kicked him out of his Mar-a-Lago country club and stopped to associate with him pretty quickly. But again, there's a lot of other heads of state and important people who were on Epstein Island. Were they doing nefarious activity or not? Will we ever know for sure? I'm just not so encouraged. I do think that more light needs to be shined on actual victims in America who are truly the voiceless, namely the ones who have been victims of open border policies. We have over 100,000 of minors unaccounted for. And if truly people want to stand up for child sex trafficking, this is where I would like to see their platforms shine a light on.
And of course, many victims have come out now and said that these files are not transparent. There's one in particular victim that was on CNN just yesterday. She was saying that she wanted Donald Trump impeached over the manner in which these files have been released. Of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene has also voiced her opinion about the matter as well and said that this isn't transparency. Of course, you've also got certain senators saying that they're going to take Pam Bondi to court. How do you think this might develop?
Again, something that should be nonpartisan is absolutely partisan. I know that this was a big issue for Trump's base. Trump himself has said there's really not much in the files. He was under the impression that there was. But according to Alan Dershowitz, the lawyer on the case, other lawyers are involved that have to protect their client's privacy. So a lot of it is hands being tied because of other lawsuits. So things are not as easy or cut and dry, and people like the attention that this Epstein saga has garnered. It's also a good way to scapegoat other bad behavior.
Daniela, thank you very much, but stay with us as we move on to our next story. And Belgium has formally joined the case launched by South Africa at the International Court of Justice, alleging Israel is committing genocide in the Gaza Strip. The Hague-based highest court in the United Nations said Belgium had filed a declaration of intervention in the case. Other countries, including Brazil, Colombia, Ireland, Mexico, Spain and Turkey, have already joined the proceedings. South Africa brought the case in December of 2023, arguing that Israel's war in Gaza violates the 1948 UN Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. Israel has rejected the allegations and has criticised the case. While a final ruling could take years, the ICJ issued provisional measures in January 2024, ordering Israel to take steps to prevent acts of genocide in Gaza and to allow unimpeded access for humanitarian aid. The ICJ also said Israel's presence in the occupied Palestinian territory is unlawful and its policies amount to annexation. Daniela, why do you think that Belgium has chosen now to join South Africa's case at the International Court of Justice?
Because there has been an influx of Muslim immigrants and the Muslim cartel is exercising their muscles. The ICJ has actually never even ruled that Israel has committed a genocide. That word is being used and it's losing its meaning under political pressure. Israel has responded on October 7th to what was indiscriminate killing, what was an attempted genocide by the terrorist group Hamas that entered Israel and killed a majority of civilians at concerts in their homes. And Israel has responded by trying to eradicate the Hamas terrorists, but unfortunately, strategically, these Hamas terrorists have embedded themselves amongst civilian areas, churches and hospitals, making it, and as well as tunnels, making it very difficult. It's also hard to argue that this is a genocide when Israel has spent millions and millions of dollars on aid. Much of that has been stolen by Hamas. These are not evidence of a genocide.
Daniela, I just want to reiterate that, of course, the United Nations and the ICJ hasn't said yet that Israel has or is committing a genocide in Gaza. Of course, that case is ongoing. However, it could take years. However, if Israel is found guilty in this ICJ case, do you think that it will follow the precautions set up in 1948, which was binding after this international treaty, after the Holocaust? This court was founded after the Holocaust. How do you think, if Israel is found guilty, it will take those precautions, it will take action? Will it bear responsibility?
Well, I think it's hard to take the UN or the ICJ seriously, considering its disproportional focus on countries like Israel without the same kind of attention and focus to other countries like Syria, Yemen, China, North Korea. It's unfortunate. I don't think it's a fair assessment. I think Israel is targeted and disproportionately scrutinized. I think that evidence shows time and time again Israel has wanted to seek peace with its neighbors. It's offered a peace plan 5 times. 5 times it was rejected. In the Hamas charter, it says unabashedly that there is only one solution. There is one state. There is no interest in living side by side with Jews. So with that, Israel, ICJ, the UN, they can say whatever they want. They don't live in Israel. They are not regularly attacked. Israel has every single right to protect its borders. The best thing the Palestinians can do is to want more moderate leadership so that there's actually 2 partners in peace and a way forward from this mess.
Israel is, of course, party to the UN Genocide Convention. It signed the convention in 1949 and ratified it in 1950. This makes Israel legally bound to the convention's obligations. I once again want to reiterate to our viewers that this ICJ has not ruled that Israel has committed a genocide in Gaza. This case is ongoing. I want to thank Daniela Bloom for joining us here on NewsX World. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for taking the time. We now move on, and US President Donald Trump's administration has imposed visa bans on a former European Union commissioner and anti-disinformation campaigners accused of censoring US social media platforms, marking the latest escalation against European regulations that US officials claim that it exceed the legitimate authority. Trump's administration has ordered that US diplomats build opposition to the European Union's landmark Digital Services Act, which is intended to combat hateful speech, misinformation and disinformation, to which Washington says stifles free speech and imposes costs on US tech companies. The visa bans come after when the administration's national security strategy has said that European leaders were censoring free speech and suppressing opposition to immigration policies, that it would risk civilizational failure for the continent. Joining us now is Matthew Verdum. He is an author and journalist. He joins us live from Washington. Matthew, thank you very much for joining us.
Sure.
The United States and the Trump administration in particular has been sanctioning people for speaking out against America and its policies. This includes the likes of ICC judges. This includes the likes of UN officials. Is this the latest chapter in that?
Sure. This is a pushback against European Union censorship. In America, we don't approve of government censorship. And we have a First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution that safeguards free speech, and we don't tolerate efforts to censor it. And the European Union is definitely guilty of trying to censor American speech. And finally, the United States, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, is fighting back and trying to hold some of the worst perpetrators of this kind of online censorship responsible. So I think if you love free speech, you have to be in favor of this.
Washington says the EU rules censor speech. However, Europe says they regulate platforms, not expression. Who do you think is actually right here?
Wow, that's a disingenuous argument. The EU is trying to stamp out hate speech, and a U.S. law doesn't recognize such a thing as hate speech. There may be speech that expresses hateful thoughts, but it's not a crime per se. And you are allowed to say things that are rude, nasty, racist, and sexist in the United States. And the European Union's the Digital Services Act doesn't provide these exceptions because Europe doesn't have a First Amendment. They don't believe in a strong right to free speech, so they think that they can just walk all over people who dissent from officially held government views. So I think that the United States has taken a strong stand here, and that if you are a civil libertarian, you're going to support it.
But these tech platforms are operating in the European Union. Does the EU not have the right to regulate them if they are operating in the bloc?
Well, legally, they have the power to regulate them if they're operating in the European Union, certainly. But the United States doesn't recognize that they have a right to censor them. And, the EU, if they want to ban social media, American social media companies, they can do that, but they can't regulate their speech. America doesn't recognize such a thing as being valid. But if the EU wants to kick out Facebook and X and Instagram and YouTube or any other social media organizations, it's free to do that. But they're going to. I don't think that their own citizenry, their own people, voters, are going to allow them to do that, because social media is very popular in the European Union, just as it is in the United States. So, yeah, they can do something about it, but I don't think, when it comes down to it, that they actually will.
Matthew, the bottom line here, do you think this is about defending free expression, or is it about power, profit, and who sets the rules for the digital world?
I don't see a dichotomy between the two bundles of principles that you just mentioned. I don't see them as contradictory. The United States wants to set the rules of the road, but it wants to do so in a way that protects freedom of speech, and that's what American policy is aimed at, such as, for example, the U.S. Decency and Communications Act, Section 230 of it, that provides a safe harbor to to social media platforms to allow them to operate without fear of being held civilly liable in court for the speech of users. So, the European Union believes first and foremost in preserving public order. The United States, by contrast, has values that support freedom, that support liberty, and that's a big difference between the two things. The Europeans are much more, and pretty well always have been, much more deferential to authority. Americans have not. Witness the Boston Tea Party and the American Revolution, where the United States fought for and won independence against Great Britain for things that today would be considered, minor inconveniences. A tiny tax on stamps and a tax on tea, and other things that today would hardly generate any enthusiasm. So there's a clash of values of principles that the two countries, well, the EU isn't a country as such, but you know what I mean. The two power blocks hold, and the United States has served notice that it's not going to put up with it. Now, if the European Union wants to keep fining, I think they issued a fine against X recently, or maybe it was Facebook for like about $100 million or something like that. They can keep on doing that. And those are, minor inconveniences to social media platforms, which have more money than God, as the saying goes. And if they really want to punish them, they can do that. But they're going to find that if they do too much, they're going to drive the social media platforms away. And European Union voters are not going to be happy with that. So basically, the EU stands for order. The United States stands for liberty, and these two things are not really compatible national values, and so that is why you're seeing this clash play out right now, in my opinion.
Matthew Verdum, thank you very much, as always, for taking the time and joining us. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. We now move on, and Libya's Army Chief of Staff, Mohammed Ali Ahmed al-Haddad, has tragically died in a plane crash after departing from Turkey's capital of Ankara. The crash also claimed the lives of 4 others, including the commander of Libya's ground forces and a military advisor. The plane, a Dassault Falcon 50, lost radio contact after taking off from Ankara's Esenboga airport. Turkish authorities later found the wreckage near Kezikavak village, but the cause of the crash is still under investigation. Libya has declared 3 days of official mourning, and Prime Minister Abdul Hamid Dbeya has sent a delegation to Turkey for updates. The jet, a leased Maltese aircraft, was en route to Tripoli. The Trump administration's new initiative, called Tech Force, has attracted significant interest, with around 25,000 people expressing a desire to join. The program seeks to recruit 1,000 engineers with expertise in artificial intelligence to work in federal roles, including agencies like Homeland Security, Veterans Affairs, and Justice. These recruits will spend 2 years working on tech projects within the US government. This hiring push marks a shift in the Trump administration's approach, moving away from earlier job cuts to focus on bolstering national security through tech innovation. Well, that's all that we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more international updates.